or nice to be connected to you wherever you are in Europe or somewhere else. The topic of today's meeting, as you already know, will be anti-money laundering procedures. And what I want to tell you is that those procedures are applicable for Czech Republic. As you probably know, the European Union has a directive that tried to unify the anti-money laundering procedures for the whole Europe, but each country has the right to introduce it in their own way. Czech Republic has some specifications, some special arrangements, some special provisions in the anti-money laundering law that might be for you a little bit surprising, and I'm gonna tell you about them as well today. So we will go through the whole process of onboarding the customer. This is going to be like 2 hours talking from my side. Of course, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to interrupt me and to ask what is interesting for you. And then we will also speak about what needs to be done through the life cycle of the relationship you have with the customer. So I already sent to Eugen the presentation. I'm going to use the printout of the presentation and some documents I'm going to point to. So feel free to distribute it among you, so you have it at disposal for later use. Yeah. So. First of all, money laundering. I don't actually know how experienced you are with anti-money laundering procedures, but I assume that you already have some experience. But anyway, I'm gonna tell you what's important. Money laundering is any activity that involves the trial of prohibiting the illegal or illicit origin of any funds, and this might also occur when providing services related to virtual assets. So money laundering is any activity that contains or comprises a trial to hide the illegal origin of the assets using your services. For the processes against the money laundering, we use abbreviation AML, anti-money laundering. This is something you already know, and the abbreviation AML is something you will meet in your business life more and more often. The activities against money laundering are strongly connected with the activities against financing of terrorism, which might be for somebody surprising, but we see that for money laundering are often used the same technique, the same ways, the same transfers, and so on, as for financing of terrorism. From this reason, we fight against financing of terrorism with the same tools as we fight against money laundering. Honestly, I do not expect that your business might be misused for financing of terrorism heavily, or probably the only one way you will fight against the financing of terrorism is that you will check the customer on the presence on the international sanctions list, because many, not all of them, but many items, many entities, especially natural entities like me or you, are on the sanctioned list because they were or they are involved in terroristic activities. What is terrorism? Terrorism is any activity that tries to harm a normal conduct of life in a country. So the terrorism can not be, or might be, of course, but the terrorism is not always connected with some religion. But for example, in Czech Republic, we have some experience already with extreme right or extreme left terrorism. For example, we have some attacks on the on the military trains, for example, in Czech Republic, some attacks on the infrastructure of the Czech post office, for example, that is important for the payout of the money and so on. So these activities will be fight with the same package of procedures that is very similar to money laundering. So why we are doing this training, and why are the anti-money laundering procedures so important for every business providing services connected with virtual assets? First of all, we are doing this training because it is a legal obligation. You have the obligation to organize such a training every 12 months for any person in your environment that might come into contact with suspicious activity. So this is anybody that is communicating with the customer directly, in person, live, on the phone, via emails, for example, and so on. It is any representative of your company. The reason why we are doing this training and why we need to comply with anti-money laundering procedure is that, of course, we might be a subject of the state control, of the state audit. In Czech Republic, we have an entity called Financial Intelligence Unit, Finanční analytický úřad. It's not important to remember that. But anyway, this bureau, actually, this Financial Intelligence Unit might tell you, hi, we are coming to visit you and we are gonna perform an audit in your environment. Honestly, I do not expect that, because the Financial Intelligence Unit is very small and very compact authority, and during last year, 2022, they did 40 audits only in Czech Republic. So this is not much. What we need is to appear, to show to our surrounding that we are compliant. Yeah. Why we need to comply with anti-money laundering is because there are some criminal sanctions. In Czech Republic, we have 2 criminal acts connected with money laundering. This is an intentional money laundering, but this is something that nobody will do. But we have also a negligence of money laundering. This is an activity when you are providing services to somebody else and you are not complying with anti-money laundering rules, and as you are not compliant, you have facilitated the money laundering, and this is something we want to avoid. So if some criminal will be under investigation, police or the courts might ask you as a services provider, okay, the criminal misused your services, show us how you were compliant with anti-money laundering legislation, and if you won't be able to show that you were at least, let's say, 80–90% compliant, you might be included in the criminal investigation as well. I don't want to scare you with that, but this is something you need to know as well. Then, what is important is a reputational risk. If somebody will find out that you are not complying with anti-money laundering legislation, it poses a very strong reputational risk, and that means that nobody will be willing to cooperate with you. No crypto assets exchange, for example, no banks, and so on. So this is, we need to watch as well. Then the Financial Intelligence Unit can impose also a private fine for any employee, not only to the company, of course, but also to any employee or to any associate with your company that has caused some kind of breaching against the anti-money laundering legislation. And there are some other penalties. I don't want to scare you as well. So what is important? We need to comply, especially not to be criminally responsible, first of all, and second of all, not to admit the reputational risk that can arise from that. Yeah. Regarding the legislation, and I promise then I will start with the measures already. As you know, we in European Union we have a directive, but this directive is not interesting to be read by you. If you want to know more about what I'm gonna talk today about, then we have Czech Anti-Money Laundering Act number 253 from the year 2008. So as you might see, the act is in force from the year 2008, but crypto assets are included, as long as I remember, from the year 2019 or 2018 or something like that. Yeah, there have been some amendments. There are some amendments coming, but none of them are very important. The important amendment or extension of anti-money laundering procedures will be so-called travel rule. You already heard about that every transaction, every transfer of the crypto assets or virtual assets must be equipped with the information about the payer and about the receiver. Something very similar to that, what happens in the bank when you send money from one account to another account. But this travel rule, I'm not going to talk about it yet at this training, because we have 1.5 years to be introduced in Czech Republic. Of course, you will need to solve that a little bit earlier, but I think you will use the solution that will provide you somebody else. So in your company, you should have written procedures that will exactly tell how to comply with anti-money laundering regulations. It's so-called system of internal procedures and checks and risk assessment. Those two documents you should have in written form, because you are a company, structured company, so you should have it in written. If you need some help with elaborating those documents, then just let me know. We can talk about it outside of this training. And now the praxis. Eugen has described me the business model you are operating a little bit, and I estimate that all of your activity is based on the business relationship. It means that any customer that you will onboard, you have a business relationship with him. This means this is any login into an environment, this is any contract or anything else. That what I understood is that you do not have just like coming and going customers without any relationship. Is that right? Is that correct? Eugen? Yeah.
Please repeat the question.
I put the sound on. Yes, we don't know who is they, who they are, and we need to perform all the checks before start the service.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. So the chart you see here on the in the shared screen describes all the obligations you have. If you have no business relationship with the customer, you can conduct a business, you can conduct a trade up to 1,000 euro purely anonymously, yeah, in Czech Republic. So if you, let's imagine you have some crypto exchange in internet, so you can buy or you can sell crypto assets to anybody without any kind of identification, without any kind of due diligence, up to 1,000 euro. But if you provide somebody a login into your environment, for example, if you have a written, for example, a contract about any services you will provide to the customer in future, then it's a business relationship, so-called business relationship, and that's a different situation. If you have no business relationship with the customer, so it is a coming and going customer, and you don't know if he is coming back, and the customer, and the transaction is between 1,000 and 15,000 euro, you need to perform identification of the customer. You need to find out if the customer is politically exposed person, and you need to verify the international sanctions. But if you perform a transaction over 15,000 euro, or if you establish a business relationship, which is your case probably, before establishing this business relationship, you need to identify the customer, you need to find out if the customer is politically exposed person, you need to undergo the due diligence process. It means to find out the source of the funds, the purpose of the transaction, and so on. And then at the end, you need to verify the international sanctions. So before you establish business relationship, so it means if before you let your customer to use your services on a regular basis, whenever he or she wants, you have to go through the whole process that is in the bottom of the screen. Identification, politically exposed person detection, due diligence, and international sanctions detection. And we will discuss all those 4 obligations you see here step by step. Let's start with identification. By the way, all those 4 steps needs to be done, needs to be concluded in full before you establish the business relationship and before you provide the customer with the first service. Yeah. So let's talk about the identification. Well, this is not something. Yeah, customer identification. That's pretty simple. Identification means the verification of the client's identity and recording of the identification data. Our legislation exactly prescribes what identification data you are obliged to gather and to verify. I'm going to talk about it later. You need to identify any person acting on behalf of the customer. Your customer might be a natural entity like me or you or somebody else, or legal entity. It means a company. Yeah, your customer might be also a legal person, legal entity. This means a company. So as the company cannot talk to you directly, there are always some persons, some live persons like me or you that are acting on behalf of the company. So you need to identify every person acting with you on behalf of the business relationship. This is very important because sometimes if the company has 2, let's say, CEOs, 2, let's simplify, 2 bosses, then all those 2 bosses won't talk to you, want to trigger the transaction, tell you what to do and so on. You need to identify both of them. How to perform the identification? The basic way how our law sees the identification is the face-to-face identification. Again, will you have the opportunity to meet every customer face-to-face or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
This is what I expect. This is something that is very typical for your business. From this reason, we have in Czech Republic one way how to identify the customer on a remote base, remotely, without meeting him in person. This remote way of identifying the customer is pretty complicated. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit later. We need to go through the process of face-to-face identification too, even though you won't do that. Just you understand what identification cards you accept, what identification data you know, and so on. So let's have a look on the face-to-face identification, and then I'm gonna explain you step by step how to perform the remote identification. Yeah. So If your customer is a natural entity, just a person like I am, for example, you should verify the match with the appearance of the customer and record the identification data in case you have the opportunity to meet him. What identification cards you accept? You can always accept a passport issued by any country, yeah, and then you can accept also identification card, driving license, or residence permit issued by European Union member country, plus Norway, Liechtenstein, Iceland, Switzerland, or United Kingdom. Because European Union is accepted, of course, the Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland are European Economic Area, and with Switzerland and United Kingdom we have a separate contracts about the acceptance of the documents. So these are 4 types of documents you can accept for identification. So you cannot accept ID if the identification document shows any signs of untrustworthiness. So the document the customer will present to you for identification must be fully trustworthy for you, especially if those documents are issued by foreign authority. I don't know if you know Prado system. Prado system is a system that is operated by European Union. It is a web page that contains pictures of many travel or identity documents of many countries, of course European countries, and many countries outside of Europe as well. So this system, this Prado system, when you Google it, you will find it, can show you easily if the document that was presented to you or sent to you is a driving license from the country, or if it is just a card for library or something like that. So this is a system that helps many entities to distinguish if the document is trustworthy or not. Yeah. You cannot.
Sorry, I have a question, please.
Yeah.
This system is we need to pay to use.
No. This system is free. If you Google it, you will enter it, and you can search by country, by document, and so on. So, for example, try with your country. Just find your country, and you will see many travel or identity documents, and have a look on your document. For example, you have, and you will see many details about the document. So it's free. Yeah. So you can expect document that is expired, that the time period for it was issued is already over. So in the time point of identification, the document must be valid, and you shouldn't accept identification cards that are damaged beyond the normal level. What is normal level? It's very difficult to tell. So you shouldn't use documents that you are not able to read because they are damaged by water, for example. They are torn, for example, with missing pages, for example, or without fixed pages, so the pages are loose, for example, or the document is glued by a tape, for example, and so on. So the documents that you can use for identification should be 100% okay. For example, in our country, in Czech Republic, if you are going to meet our documents, everyone that has an identity document and the document is damaged has a legal obligation to ask as soon as possible for a new document. Otherwise, the person might be fined. Yeah. So if somebody will present you a document that is damaged, you should refuse it, especially because you will you will see that later. You will take copies of those documents, and when you get an audit for from a financial intelligence unit, and when they see that you have accepted a document that is damaged, they will find it as a breaching, and it will result in a penalty. So you should accept only healthy looking identification of travel documents. Yeah. So for the face-to-face identification, when you meet me as a customer, for example, you should not accept a copy, scan, or photography of the identity card. But of course, this is not valid for the remote identification we are coming already to. I think you are already looking forward. So I'm asking you for your patience. We will go through this face-to-face identification process, and then we will talk about the copies, about the remote identification as well. You should never accept an identification card that does not contain a photo, even though you do not meet the customer. This is a pretty strange requirement, but only identification cards with photos are accepted. Passport, identity card, driving license, and resident permit always contains a photo, so that shouldn't be a problem. The photo shouldn't be modified or altered. And you should not, of course, accept the document where the picture does not correspond to the customer you see sitting or standing in front of you, if you have the possibility of meeting him. Yeah. So, of course, so now already we know what identity card we know, how should it look like? Yeah, what form should it have? And now we are going to have a look what identification data we are obliged to gather. So that data you will see on these 3 slides is a mandatory list of data you need to have about each customer that is a natural entity. Full name of the customer. If the name or surname contains more words, you need to have the full name and the surname. That is not very typical in Czech Republic. Usually, or the majority of the population here has one name and one surname. But anyway, it might occur that somebody has 2 surnames written in the identity card. So please, you need to register, you need to take note about each name the customer has. Then you need to have an exact address of residence. Yeah, what kind of residence? That is something that our law does not stipulate. So what I can recommend you, require a permanent address from the customer. Please remember that the residence address is always connected to a specific property. So it needs to be a building. Yeah? It shouldn't be a post office box. Yeah, because sometimes when you ask the customer about the address, they will present you a PO box or some artificial box that is not an exact address of a building where somebody can live. The address of residence is sometimes not written in the identity card that the customer will present you. So in these cases, in Czech Republic, we do not require a proof of address or something like that. For example, in United Kingdom, you probably know about that. United Kingdom, you have to ask the customer about the utility bill, for example, electricity or water supply, for example. And so we do not require that in Czech Republic. So if you see the address in the identity card, you have the address. Yeah, that's fine. But if you don't see the address, especially in the driving license or in passport, you don't have the address in the passport neither. So in these cases, you have to ask the customer about probably different identity card, but this is not required. Actually, in these cases where you do not see the address, you can ask the customer. ask the customer about the address, to fill in some form, to write it into an email and so on. But always please check that this is a building that exists. You can use, for example, Google Maps. Yeah, of course, it might be a building that doesn't look very, very nice. That's not important for us, but it needs to be an existing building. That's important. Yeah. So, what is important? If the person has an address of residence in Czech Republic or Slovak Republic, you need to gather the birth number. In Czech Republic and Slovakia, before we separated, we had and we still have personal numbers we call birth number. It's strange, but it's called really like this. This number looks like 6 digits, comma, and 4 digits. Sometimes only 3 digits after the comma. But let's say that's 9 or 10 digits. Yeah, every person that has a residency in Czech Republic or in Slovakia has this number. And if you see the address in Slovakia or in Czech Republic, you need to register this personal number. The documents I have presented to you, so it means the passport, identity card, driving license, or resident permit, that always contains this number. Or okay, not always, but in 99.9% of the cases. Yeah, don't remember that. Do not forget that. Yeah. What is more important, if the customer is has a residency of so-called high-risk country, I sent you the list of the countries, yeah, then you need to be very careful, and I do not recommend you to provide services to such a customer. Czech authorities publish like every 3 or 4 months updated list of countries that are high risk. It means that have some measures against money laundering, but they do not enforce them or they do not impose them. Yeah, so those countries, according to Czech authorities, pose a high risk for our environment. And from this reason, if the customer has a residence in this country, you need to consider this customer to be high risk profile. This means you need to perform an enhanced due diligence. It means when you gather information about source of funds, you need to be very strict and you need to require a proof about the source of the funds and so on. If the customer has a residency in this country, if you have a look on the list of the countries, now we have on the list Vietnam. In Czech Republic, we have many. We have many entities coming from Vietnam, living here and so on. There is also Croatia, which is European Union member. This is pretty strange because Croatia has anti-money laundering legislation, but they do not enforce the legislation. So from this reason, it's on our checklist. I hope it's not gonna stay there for a long time. So if the customer you are onboarding for Czech Republic has a residency in Croatia, you need to see this customer as a high risk profile. Yeah. So we have full name, we have exact.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For example, I look the Turkish, but Turkish is in European Union as well. So now he in a high risk country. Yeah. He just mentioned like high risk.
Turkey is not in European Union yet, but it doesn't change anything. Croatia is in the European Union. So if you see if your customer has a residency or citizenship of of any country you see on the list, you have to see the customer as a high-risk profile. And this has some consequences when doing the customer due diligence. I'm going to show you later what does this mean. It means that you need to gather much more information about source of funds, about the reason of using your services, and so on. So most of the virtual asset services provider are refusing those customers, because later you will see what additional obligation this will trigger. Yeah. Sorry for that. I'm going to take a sip of water. Yeah. So you need to watch this list when you go to the webpage of Financial Intelligence Unit of Czech Republic. I can see it in the list. You can sign up for newsletter, for updates, and when the list changes, they will send you the new list, which is something you should be aware every time. Yeah. So we have the full name of the customer, we have exact address of residence, then we need to gather the information about the nationality, about the citizenship of the customer. If the customer has a nationality or citizenship of, let's say, 2 or 3 countries, you should know all the countries of citizenship. And do not forget, if the country is Czech Republic or Slovak Republic, we need to get the birth identification number, because such a person has assigned birth identification number, birth number. Yeah, we are going to come to that later. And again, if the customer has a citizenship of a high-risk country, you need to consider this customer to be high risk, and you need to execute the enhanced due diligence, and we will talk about it later. This is quite complicated process, and as I told before, many virtual asset services providers rather dump such a customer. They do not provide the services to those customers, because it's quite complicated. But let's see, maybe your decision will be to go through the process of enhanced due diligence. Then you need to get the birth number if it was assigned. Birth number is that special number I told you already, those 10 or 9 digits in some cases. And the birth number was assigned to any entity, any person that has a residency or citizenship of Czech Republic or Slovak Republic. It would be a breaching of regulations if you have a Czech or Slovak customer with a residency in Czech or citizenship in Czech or Slovak Republic, and you don't have the birth identification number, the birth number. And I remember you that every identity document issued by Czech Republic has this, nearly every document has this birth number. Yeah. If birth number was not assigned to the customer, because the customer is, for example, from Germany, so the customer has a residency in Germany, has a German citizenship, so such a customer does not have a Czech birth number, then you need to gather the information about the date of birth and a sex of the customer. Yeah. So fifth identification that data you need to get from the customer, you need to verify from the identity card, is place of birth. It is always a city and state, city and country where the person was born. This shouldn't be usually a problem, but in some identity cards, in some, I think, passports, there might be written only a country or only a region. If the identity card that was presented to you does not contain the information about the place, about the city of the birth of the customer, then you have to ask the customer. Yeah. So there is a rule: if the identity card does not contain any of the data that that our law requires, you have to ask the customer about it, and you need to gather these information. Plus, you need to keep the details about the identity card. From that, the identification was done. It is a type and number of the identity card. Yeah, the issuer, it means the issuing authority, and the country of issue. Sometimes the issuer is let's say a shortcut of something. So for example, in United Kingdom passports, you see as an issuer UK. This is a shortcut, UKPA. Yeah, and this is a shortcut for United Kingdom Passport Agency. You just register what you see in the identity document. You don't need to understand it. In some passports, you see only digits that point to the authority. You don't understand at all, but you will register what you see on the identity card. And validity period of the identity card. So especially the end of the validity of the identity card. Yeah. So these are the identity data you need to have for each customer that is a natural entity, like for example, I am. Yeah. If the natural entity is acting as a business conducting entity, then you need to have some additional data. Yeah, because some natural entities in Czech Republic, we have quite many of them, like 1.5 million here in Czech Republic, are operating a business as a private entities. If those entities are using your services for their business, yeah, then it's not a company, yeah, for their sole business as a private undertaker. Then you need to have the trade name, the name of the business, yeah, then the address, it's called registered office, and the identification number that was assigned to the person. Yeah, in Czech Republic we have two kinds of those business operating individuals. If you are operating business in terms of trade, for example, you can find such a person in the živnostenský rejstřík. It is a trade register. In Czech Republic, we have a public list of business operating individuals. It's called trade register, and you can verify if the person really keeps the license for such a business. Or if you are providing financial services, then you will be, or your customer or the individual will be inscripted in Czech National Bank, which is our financial supervising authority. This is the shortcut for the register. You can Google it, you will find it very easily. If you want me, I can send you the shortcuts to those registers. Yeah, in Czech Republic we like registers. We have many information public, so this makes your situation much easier. Yeah. So now we have finished the identification of a natural entity, and let's have a look what happens if your customer is a company, a business, no, not business, but let's say legal entity, which is usually a company or some municipality, for example, a city or a village can be your customer as well, which is not happen very often, but let's say just theoretically. In case a company wants to be your customer, the identification has several steps. First step is you need to identify any individual acting on behalf of the company. For example, the company that is going to be your customer has 5 bosses, that has 5 CEOs, 5 members of a statutory body. But only 2 of them are going to talk to you. Only 2 of them are going to be in contact with you. So you need to identify only 2 of them. Yeah. For example, you have a running business relationship, everything is fine, you provide the services to the customer, And the third CEO, third member of a statutory body, wants to interact with you about the business and so on. Before you start, you need to identify that third member of a statutory body as well. We have two remaining. I don't want to tell we don't know, but we have still two without identification. If they want to interact with you somehow later, you need to identify them as well. So the rule is you have to identify any individual that acts on behalf of the company. Then you need to identify the company, yeah, and you need to verify, and that's the third step. You need to verify if the natural entity, if the individual, one of those 5 bosses that is interacting with you, has the right to act on behalf of the company. Yeah. So let's have a look on the steps. The first step is the identification of any individual acting on behalf of the company. This is something we already told about. Yeah, how to perform the identification of an individual, we already know. So we need to get his identification card and we need to register all the identification data we were talking before. How we can do a remote identification of individual, we will talk in, let's say, 10 minutes. Yeah, we are coming to that point. Yeah. So let's say we have identification of individual acting on behalf of the company behind us. It's done. Then we need to identify the company, the legal entity. How to do that? We need to get a proof of the existence of the legal entity. This means if your customer will be a Czech company, then you have to get the extract from the public register. In Czech Republic, we have a public register of companies with many information about the company, about the statutory body, for example, and sometimes with many information about the beneficial owners and with the ownership structure of the company as well. So I'm going to show you this register on the next slide. Yeah. So if your customer is a company, association, or foundation, then you need to get the extract from a public register, and you don't need to bother the customer with that because you can get the document on your own from internet because it's publicly provided. It's electronically signed as well. So that's a very easy task. If your customer would be a municipality, then you need to get from the customer record of the constituent assembly. Every time there is an election in a village or in a city, after the election they have the first seating, then they have a so-called constituent assembly. So you need to have the record of the constituent assembly. For example, your customer might be also a church, then it is an extract from a register of churches and religious societies, for example, but this is not going to happen very often to you. Most of the customers will be companies. Yeah. If your customer will be a company from abroad, you need to get a similar document. Yeah. In Czech Republic, the extract from the public register, you can get it from internet very easily. The customer even doesn't know that you are downloading this document because it's publicly provided. But if your customer will be a company from abroad, for example, from United Kingdom and so on, and you are going to provide the services from a Czech environment, it means Czech law applies. You have to ask the customer to provide you document proving that the company exists. Yeah. So if you will be forced to get the documents from abroad, for example, from Slovakia, from United Kingdom and so on, please check if the document is issued by official authority. This is important. And if check please that the document contains the name of the company, the address or registered office of the company, and the registration number or or some equivalent, yeah, some alphanumeric code that was assigned to the company. And please check that the document also contains the list of the members of the statutory body. It means the list of the entities, individuals that are allowed to act on behalf of the company. Yeah. Always, you should be able to see the original or certified copy or document signed digitally by the issuer. You should that's the same case as when you are identifying the customer face-to-face. You need to have the original document. This is the same situation. So always you should have the possibility to see the original document or electronically signed document or certified copy. Yeah. When you see the document, you are not required to store the original document or the certified copy. You can make a copy of it, but every time you should have the possibility to have a look on the copy. Yeah. So this is the internet extract from the public register. This is the address where you can find it, or.justice.cz. And this is a typical extract from a public register. But what is important? This web page you see as an example here is not the official document about existence of the company. You have to click in the right corner, and you have to download the PDF version of the document. That's what is electronically signed. Yeah. So if your customer will be a Czech company, please remember always to download the PDF version of that extract on the public register. Yeah. You have to save it or print it. It will be okay. Yeah. These documents should also contain the identification data of the legal entity. Similarly to identification data of natural entity, of an individual, you remember name, residence, citizenship, and so on. You need to get the information about the company as well. It's a company name, company headquarters, it means registered address. And please remember, if the headquarters or if the registered address is in high-risk country, you need to consider the customer to be a high-risk profile. So we are back on the list of high-risk countries. Yeah. Then you need to have a company identification number or similar number from abroad, and data of each member of statutory body. The record from the business from the companies I showed you one slide before always contains data of each member of a statutory body. It means name and surname, date of birth, residence address of every member of a statutory body, and that's it. Pretty simple. So back to our company. Remember, imagine that you have a company with 5 members of the statutory body. 3 of them are interacting with you. So you need to identify 3 of them as they were identified face to face. Yeah. And the remaining 2, you have to you don't need to identify them. You just need to have the data. You have to have the name, date of birth, and the residence address. This information you will always find on the record from the company register of Czech Republic. So this is pretty simple issue. Yeah. So we have identified every individual acting on behalf of the company. We have identified the company already. And now we need to verify if those three members of the statutory body or 3 entities, 3 individuals that are claiming acting on behalf of some company have the right, if all of them have the right to act on behalf of the company. So who has the right to act on behalf of the company? First of all, it's a member of the statutory body. Member of the statutory body has the right to act on the behalf of the company. And if the individual is not member of the statutory body, you always need to have a power of attorney to represent the company. So if somebody wants to interact with you about some company, you need to check whether he or she is a member of a statutory body, or if he or she is not, then you need to have a power of attorney. This is sometimes, for example, a financial manager that is not a member of a statutory body, but is employed, for example. But in this case, you need to have a power of attorney signed by the member of the statutory body. Regarding the verification of the signature on the power of attorney, our law does not require to have the verified signature on the power of attorney. But I strongly encourage you to require it, because it increases the security of the interactions and of the contracts you will establish with the customer, to avoid some kind of fraud resulting in outflow of funds from your environment, which is something we really don't want. Yeah. If you have a look on the what you need to be aware, if you have a look on the record about a company in Czech Republic, that's the picture here. For example, this is an example of a company that has 2 members of statutory body. Unfortunately, it's in Czech, and probably you do not understand that. But you have to make then a translation, because if the company, this is a very special type of company that occurs sometimes. The company has two members of a statutory body, and on the last line, there is written způsob jednání, way of interaction, way of negotiating. And there is written that the company is represented by both members of the statutory body at once. It means if only one member of statutory body interacts with you, it's not valid. Yeah, some companies have 2 members of statutory body or even more, and there is written that okay, there is a list of statutory body members, but if they want to interact with somebody, just 2 of them must interact at once, or 3 of them must interact at once. And you should be aware of that, because any interaction with you that is outside of this rule is not valid, simple. Yeah, and we don't want to cause an outflow of the funds from your environment or some kind of fraud. But this is a very rare structure that occurs. Most of the companies, like for example my company, or majority of the companies, like 99% of the companies in Czech Republic, have more members of statutory body, and when any of them interacts with you, it's valid. So the member of a statutory body can interact alone as well. Yeah. So restriction, yeah, or the owners, yeah. And what is important, there is a difference between owner of company. I'm quite sure you know about it, but there is a difference between the owner of the company and of the member of the statutory body. Sometimes a mistake happens that you allow to interact with you, owner of the company, which is something you see in the record as well, but the owner is not a member of the statutory body. This is a mistake, because if somebody is owner of the company, he does not have the right to interact with somebody on behalf of the company unless he is member of a statutory body. This is very often a mistake that results in some frauds as well, and so on. So be careful about it, please, as well. Yeah, sorry. So let's move on. There are some special cases of identification when the customer is represented by power of attorney, or the customer is represented by legal representative, like for example children and his mother or father, for example, or guardian, or insolvency administrator. But this won't happen to you very often, and if it happens, just let me know. I'm gonna guide you through the process. What will we do now? We will finally, and thank you for your patience, come to the remote identification. What was the problem of what I was talking before? Was that I was talking about the face-to-face identification of individual, which is something you won't do. You can replace the face-to-face identification with so-called remote identification, which is quite challenging process. It has several steps. We will go through the steps. And if you ask me, can we replace this by video identification or some other form of remote identification? My answer will be no, unfortunately. In Czech Republic, and I'm sorry for that, we do not have video identification. I know the tools that are used in Germany, in many other countries, where you just take your identification card, you move it, and so on, and they will provide you identification data. But we do not have it in Czech Republic. We do not have the article in our law. It was considered, but the legislators in Czech Republic has decided not to accept this kind of identification, as many, I don't know if that's true, but because of many frauds, fraud identifications occur in this case. So let's see about the remote identification we have in Czech Republic. The customer, first step is, or not the first step, but one of the steps, because the steps might be in a different row. Yeah, the one step is the customer needs to send you scans of 2 identification cards. Yeah. Well, actually, it's not 2 identification cards, but 1 identification card and 1 supporting card showing identification data. So the first must be an identification card from the list we already had. You remember passport, identification, ID card, driving license, or residential permit. So you need to have 1 document from this group, and the second document must be 1 additional supporting card showing basic identification data. So any card that is used for identification, for example, health insurance card, this second document is not required to have a photo. The first document, passport, identification card, driving license, residential permit, and so on, they must always contain a photo. But the second document, second supporting card, is not required to have a photo. So it can be, let's say, a health insurance card. It might be an employee identification card. It might be issued by private company as well, but it must be something that is issued to identify the person. Yeah, to enter some building, to that is eligible for some healthcare and so on. Yeah, so every person you will identify, every individual must present you 1 identity card and 1 supporting identification document. That's first step. Second step is a verification payment must be processed. So the customer must process a verification payment in fiat, in legal currency, not in virtual assets, in legal currency from the customer's account that is held in a bank or credit union, you're not electronic money issuer, operating in the European Union or European Economic Area. What does it mean? The customer must send you 1 crown, $1, or 1 cent from his or her account to your account. Yeah, that's important. And the account he or she will send, the verification payment, must be in a bank or credit union that operates in European Union or European Economic Area. Please note, this is not Switzerland and this is not United Kingdom. So this means that this remote identification can be used only by customers that have an account in European Union or in European Economic Area. This is restricting you dramatically, because if you were looking forward that you will onboard customers from India, for example, or from United States and so on, you won't be able to use this remote identification because they do not have bank account in European Economic Area. They could have it, for example. They could establish an account by Revolut, for example, because recently Revolut is a bank already. It was not before, but it's already a bank. And also Indian entity can have an account by Revolut in I don't know, is Estonia, was that, or I don't remember the country where they are sitting. And this payment from Revolut can be used as a verification payment. Yeah, but most of them, they don't have an account in European Economic Area. Yeah. Plus, please, what is important? The payment must be done from the bank account of the customer. If I am an individual customer, for example, I am going to be your customer, it's going to be my private account. But if your customer is a company, you will have to gather the 2 identification cards, as I told you, or one identification card and the second supporting ID for each member of a statutory body acting on behalf of the company, plus the verification payment must be done from the company's account, not from the private account of the members of statutory body. This is important. Yeah. So the verification payment must be done from the bank account of the customer. And if the customer is a company, then the verification payment must be done from the company's account. That's important. And we are not done yet. That's important. If the system allows that, and that's always nearly, the paying side, I mean the customer, must equip this payment with a special text reference. Usually when you are sending money from your account to another account, you can add a reference, a text reference. What is that for? Number, invoice number, and so on. So our law requires for the verification payment text information that states 3 information: purpose of the identification. Let's imagine, for example, account at company. Yeah, name of the obliged person, which is your company. So the customer needs to write there account at and the name of your company. And then the customer needs to write there also his or her name and surname. Well, actually, not the name and surname of the customer, but the name and the surname of the person sending the money. And that's something very confusing. This is very often a problem because the customer is able to send the verification payment, but very often forgets to add this text reference, account at your name of your company, yeah, and his or her name, the name of the sending person from the bank account, yeah. And one confusing thing, just to recapitulate it. So you have the identification of 3 members of statutory body that are going to interact with you, but each of them, for each of them you have 2 identification cards, plus you have the verification payment of €1 or €1 from the company's bank account, and the payment is equipped by a text information containing information about the purpose of the identification, which is account at or the services of your company, name of your company, and name and surname of the person that triggered this payment, yeah, from the bank account of the company. Yeah. You can help the customer with a QR code. This is very often used in Czech Republic when the customer selects a remote identification. He will upload on the web page the 2 identification cards, and then the system requires the customer to upload, to trigger the payment of €1 from his or her bank account, and they show him a QR code including this special reference. So it simplifies the whole situation. So you can use the QR code when you program that. And you need to be sure that this bank account belongs to the customer. When you are sending money from Czech Republic account to Czech Republic account, the sending bank will equip the payment with the name and the surname of the holder of the account. So when you have a look on the a list of transactions credited to your bank account, you always see within Czech Republic who sent it to you, what person sent it to you, and you can be 100% sure if the payment came from the company XY, then it is exactly from that the company XY is the holder of the account. But if the payment will come from abroad, very often the banks in Germany, in Slovakia, and so on, they do not send to our bank the name of the entity that is a holder of the account that the money came from. So in this case, you are not able to verify if the customer is holder of the account. You have to ask the customer for the document showing that he or she is a holder of a bank account. This is most often the account statement or account agreement. And it is never a print screen from internet banking, from mobile, and so on. So when you see on the list of credited transaction who is the owner of the company, and when you can verify that this is your customer, yeah, then you are fine. But if the verification payment is from abroad and you just see the number, bank account number and the bank, but you don't see who is holder of the bank account, you have to make one additional step. You have to ask the customer for a proof that he or she is holder of the company. And this is a bank account statement or account agreement about holding of the bank account. Yeah, and there cannot be any doubts about the identity of the customer and or the person acting on behalf of the customer. And you can use this remote identification only if the business relationship was established on the base of text contract in a text form. So the customer should at least agree with some overall conditions or with some contract or something like that. Yeah. This is our remote identification. In Czech Republic, we have another form of identification. It's called Bank ID. Maybe you heard about that. Bank ID is a product sold by other banks that if the customer agrees, he or she can trigger in his internet banking to send his identification data from bank to your company. But you need to have a contract with the Bank Association of Czech Republic, and you have to pay for each delivery of identification data. And this is accessible only for Czech people having Czech bank account. Some of virtual asset services providers are using this advantage of bank ID. This is another form of remote identification, but I don't know if this is interesting for you. If you want to know something more about bank ID that has some restrictions, just let me know. I'm going to send you some information, where to find information about it, who to contact, but I don't know if this is the right process that is for you. So we are at the end of identification process. I know that this is quite challenging and maybe disappointing for you that we do not have any, let's say, more modern tools how to identify the customer on the remote basis, but this is how our local anti-money laundering legislation was built, and we cannot unfortunately change it. So I suggest now a small break, like for 5 or 10 minutes. Let's meet here at 12:25, and then we will continue with politically exposed person screening, due diligence, and sanctions screening, which is going to be easier and straightforward process than the identification. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Алло, привет. Слушай, ну там, короче, проблема будет, получается. Ладно. О, подожди. Алло? Так? Нет. Что я сделал? Подожди. Алло?
So I guess we can continue.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Well,
Stop. One connect now only.
okay, so we are waiting for somebody.
Now I think everybody is here.
Everyone is here. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's the same. So we already know how to identify the customer. So how to verify the identity and what data and what documents do we need or what procedures.
Martin,
Yeah.
one question, please. About this test payment you told. We actually first time heard about that instrument, and this condition is dramatically reduce our trading possibility and concurrent standing on the market. Our clients oftenly use the SEPA payment, and SEPA not instant, simple SEPA, and they don't want to wait 4 or 3 hours only for identification payment. After this, the next payment for the service. Can we avoid this this condition or some another way? Because other company on the market don't require this condition.
Well, is it a Czech company? Is it the company doing the business under the Czech legislation? Do you know? Because
No.
That's the problem we have in Czech Republic, unfortunately, because we have a face-to-face identification or this, sorry for that, stupid kind of complicated remote identification. And then we have bank ID, which is complicated as well, because you need to have the contract with the Bank Association of Czech Republic. And the customer has to confirm in his internet banking that he wants to transfer his identification data from the bank to you, and so on. So this is probably not interesting for you. In Czech Republic, we do not have any other option, unfortunately. No. If we had any other option, I would be very happy to tell you, you can use a video identification, for example. Do you know the tools that are used in abroad, that you just say hello with your identity card, you move the identity card, and the identification is performed? In Czech Republic, we do not have this tool, unfortunately. I cannot tell you how to avoid the payment and so on. No. In Czech Republic, we do not have any article in our law how to do the identification in a different way than this one. I know this is disappointing for you, but in Czech Republic also many companies are not complying with that. So they made an internal decision. Okay, we will do the remote identification. Yeah, we will require from the customer 2 identification cards, or 1 identification card and 1 supporting document. Then we will require from the customer a selfie picture with the identification card, which enhances the identification. But our customers don't have the bank account, or they don't want to wait till the money is credited to our bank account and so on. So they simply make a decision not to comply with the law. And of course, when there is an audit, they can expect a fine in a volume of several hundred thousands of Czech crowns, which are, let's say several 10,000s of euros. Yeah, and they simply count that they know that they are not compliant, but they know if they won't be compliant with that sending money, it would kill their business. And Eugen, honestly speaking, this is also a reason why many businesses in virtual assets services moved out of Czech Republic. They moved, for example, to Germany or to Slovakia, where video identification, where simplified identification is allowed, but not in Czech Republic. Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that, but you have two options. Option number one is to comply with that, what you saw with the disaster, yeah. And the second option is to make a decision not to comply with the Czech legislation and go for, let's say, freestyle or punk, and to simplify the requirements. But in this case, you are clearly outside of the regulatory requirements in Czech Republic. And if there is an audit, you can expect to be fine, because you won't be able to show the you can expect the fine, because you won't be able to show the verification payment. What is also done is when you have an audit, for example, or just a question, will you have how many new customers will you have every week? Can you estimate that? Hundreds or tens or
from the couple of dozen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Why I'm asking?
To 40,
Okay.
maybe 50.
Why I am asking that? Because we were present at some audits from Financial Intelligence Unit where they did identification in a wild way. So they just let the customer to send them the identification card, and that was it. They didn't require any payment. They didn't make a trial to meet the customer, to identify him face to face. And what they did at the audit was they simply they claimed to the auditors from the state, we met the customer. It was very strange, because the customer was in the morning in Russia, and in the evening they had a different customer in the United States, and they claimed, no, we met him face to face, you know, and they were not able to prove the contrary. Yeah. And they are not allowed, or they are allowed to ask the customer as well. They can contact the customer and ask him, in which way did the company make your identification? Did a representative of the company meet you or not? And but if the customer tells, no, we didn't meet, it cannot be used as proof against you. So this company went from the audit clear, because they consistently claimed we met the customer in person. Yeah. I'm not happy about that, what I'm telling, but this is what are some companies forced to do. Some companies require the verification payment, because they have a Czech customer, and the payments are now instant in Czech Republic, which is not your case, but they do not require that special text reference, because to write that reference in the field is quite complicated, and that appears to be complicating the whole situation. And they know they are not compliant, and they have some funds already aside to pay the fine when it comes to that. Yeah. If I knew, yeah, sorry.
So if we will tell that we personally meet every client we have, then audit can't claim us in some illegal things.
Exactly.
Yes?
If you will be consistent, yeah. First of all, and second of all, if you will be, that was the reason actually why I asked you how many new customers will you have per week. Because if you tell me thousands, the face-to-face
Oh.
identification were not possible. And it depends also on the location where you have the customer from. Yeah. But what is important, if somebody, but you have to be very careful with that, because one thing is audit, but second thing is the criminal responsibility, because if one of your customers is under criminal investigation and it will be shown that he used your services for money laundering, you might be comprised in the criminal procedures for neglection of your obligations. And police has much wider competencies than the auditors have. We didn't have such a case in Czech Republic yet, but this is something you need to be aware as well. Yeah.
No, we can make the all checks for the sanctions, for the personal obliged person, so on. But one thing what we can do, this is test payment, because the time for the transaction is very important for our business. You understand it?
Yeah. Completely.
So we don't want to avoid the law or something like that. We just want to make a possibility to make our business with the company in your country. So if we can do it with this way, okay, no problem. If maybe it's maybe there is some outsource company that can provide this checks or something we can use.
No, unfortunately no. Yeah, if there were any opportunity, because this identification, that's the stone that we need to break at each such a meeting, and we didn't find any way how to do that. The law is very strict about it, and as I told you, that's the reason why many companies left Czech Republic, because they don't have any smoother, quicker, nicer options how to onboard the customer in the sensitive time point of the onboarding. Unfortunately we don't have it. What could be also done, it's not compliant with the law, but is you identify the customer. So we'll ask him for 2 identification cards, and you ask the customer for to trigger the verification payment, but you don't wait for the verification payment. Because of course the verification payment will come in a couple of hours, yeah, but it will appear on your bank account statement just only with a date, not with a time. So the auditors, when they come, they cannot distinguish at which time point did the money arrive. Was it before the first transaction or after the first transaction? So this is something that could probably help you. Plus, Eugen, the verification payment can be the first payment for your services. So the verification payment, it doesn't need to be just the first payment for. It doesn't need to be the €1 or €1. It can be. The legal currency, but not virtual assets. Yeah. But
yes, understand.
Yeah. So if I want to buy from you 1 Bitcoin, for example, yeah, the verification payment can be the payment for the Bitcoins I will send you, but it needs to be from European bank, and it needs to be legal currency. So it does not need to be in USDT or something like that.
How we have to legalize this? We have to store the texting messages, or so that we ask the client to send us this test payment, and the test payment that he send us is the 30,000 euro for the 1 Bitcoin.
You need
How we need to legalize?
Yeah. So you need to have 2 identification cards, or one, or the
Yes.
one, yeah. And the verification payment, you at the time point of audit, you have to be able to prove that the verification payment was made by the customer. So it means you will have to show your bank account statements. And for each customer you have onboarded, you have to show the payment. You have to show the payment. And it can be a payment, just a test payment, like €1 you will send back, for example, I don't know. Or it can be the first payment for the first service within your environment. So the auditors, then when they come, they want to see the 2 identification cards plus the bank account statement that is going to document the verification payment. Plus, as I told you, that was a tiny note, but it's important. This remote identification can be used only for business relationship, where the business relationship exists on the text basis. So there should be some kind of contract between you and the customer. It does not need to be just a typical text contract, but it can be conditions where the customer ticks, I agree with the conditions online. So you should be able to show those conditions the customer has ticked as well. Yeah. So yeah.
So in this payment that the customer sent to us, is it obliged to description is the test payment for the or
yeah, this, I don't know, do you see the shared presentation by me? Yeah.
Yes, I see
the text information
okay.
In the reference, yeah, that's mandatory. But many companies in Czech Republic that are using this kind of identification just skip this point. They do not comply with the text reference that it is a account at blah 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 easycoin.co.cz, my name, and so on, because that's so stressing for the customer. And of course it's not compliant, but I don't think the fine for that will be high. Yeah. So you need to watch that the account is in European Union, including Czech Republic, of course. Yeah. And that is a bank account. That's important because some accounts are led also by electronic money issuers, EMI, and those entities are not allowed. Yeah, it needs to be bank or credit union, which is, let's say, a smaller bank. Yeah.
But can we accept the first payment for our service, not for the test payment or something like this?
The test payment can be the first payment towards you for your services already. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, understand.
So, yeah, but if, for example, if there is a situation that I have 1 Bitcoin, I need to sell to you, then the first payment from me to you,
yes, I understand.
the Bitcoin transfer, and we need this test transfer. Yeah, so we are at the same situation we were before. So Eugen, try to think about that. You know already what are the options here, and we can meet later, like in 1 week, and we can discuss it. We can discuss it wider. Yeah, because
okay,
there's a lot of information. There's a lot
thank
of
you.
No, it's okay. We have enough time. I'm not telling that for that, but
because this is very important. So I spent so many time for it. So I'm sorry for that.
No, it's okay. That's crucial for your business. And sometimes I have some trainings where they told us, okay, if there's no option, they didn't believe me actually that there is no option. So they went to attorney and they told them the same. Yeah, actually. So that's the reason why some of the businesses left to Slovakia, for example, left to Germany, because they have wider options to identify the customer. Yeah. So if you just try to process it internally with your colleagues, how many customers are able to do the payment, how many are not, and we can discuss it later, go deeper into it when you will digest it in your hands.
Okay,
yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, so we already know who is the customer because we have the identification behind us, and we need to find out if the customer is politically exposed person or not. Yeah, why is that? It was shown that politically exposed persons are exposed to a special kind of, let's say, danger. They are often involved in special kind of criminal activities like bribery, for example, like misuse of subsidiaries, and so on. So from these reasons, politically exposed persons are seen as high risk profile, and we need to find out if every customer is or is not politically exposed person. And if the customer is politically exposed person, we need to exercise an enhanced due diligence. We need to find much more about the source of the funds of the customers. So we already have customers that are connected to a high-risk country. That's the first type of high-risk customer. Now we will have a second type, and these are politically exposed persons. Yeah, so let's talk about it. Politically exposed person is a person who was or is in an important public function with regional, national, or wider significance. But politically exposed person is not only the person in the function, but also the person that comes from the, let's say, family surrounding or business surrounding of the person in function. So, for example, if I am politically exposed person because I am a mayor of a city, then all my family, all my wide relatives are politically exposed persons as well. And also, I am owning a company, yeah? So all the co-owners of the company are politically persons as well, yeah? So it is an illness that spreads very wide, let's say, yeah? What functions, what positions result in politically exposed person position? Mayor of a municipality or city, governor of a region, for example, head of state, ministers, member of parliament, not only in Czech Republic, but in any other country, judge of Supreme Court, members of the Central Bank's board. What is interesting, politically exposed person is a person that is in a statutory body of a company operated and owned by the state. We have many companies in Czech Republic operated by the state, owned and operated by the state, like Czech Post Office, Czech Airlines, for example, Budvar, they are making a beer, Budweiser, that company is, the majority is owned by the state, for example. So all the members of the statutory body are politically exposed persons as well. Also the ambassadors or the chargé d'affaires, these are politically exposed persons. But not every person having a diplomatic passport is a politically exposed person, because, for example, the driver at the embassy has a diplomatic passport as well, but is not a politically exposed person. So this is a list of functions that result in politically exposed person, and how to, and also the entities or the individuals from the family of politically exposed person are itself politically exposed, and also other persons, other individuals from the business environment of a politically exposed person are politically exposed as well. So, for example, if I'm politically exposed person, I'm owning a company, other co-owners are politically exposed as well. So, how to get the information if the customer is or is not a politically exposed person? You have several options. The best option and the cheapest option is to ask the customer. You can ask the customer and to write down what he or she answered to you. So you can ask the customer, are you a politically exposed person or are you not? This is enough. This is something that other officials are accepting. The question is, if somebody will lie you, who is responsible for that? Unfortunately, your company. So what I suggest you can gather the information about the politically exposed person by asking the customer, or maybe you will have some entry questionnaire for the customer where you will ask the customer, are you or are you not politically exposed person? So you ask the customer when you are onboarding, and plus you Google the customer, because you can find many information about mayors, about the judges of Supreme Court, about the statutory body of companies owned and operated by the state, for example, and so on. So ask the customer about if he or she is a politically exposed person, plus Google the customer and write down what is the result, if the customer is or is not politically exposed person. Also, another thing, if your customer is individual, like for example I, then you will ask me, are you, Martin Sidor, politically exposed person? That's clear. But if your customer is a company itself cannot be a politically exposed person, of course, yeah, because it cannot be a relative, it cannot be a judge of a Supreme Court, it cannot be a minister, for example, and so on. So in this case, if your customer is a company, you have to ask if any person asking on behalf of the company, or any member of a statutory body, or any owner, beneficial owner of the company is a politically exposed person. If anybody from the environment of the company, so any member of the statutory body, any person acting on behalf of the company, or any beneficial owner is a politically exposed person, then you have to consider the company to be politically exposed, even though the company cannot be politically exposed itself. Yeah. So what happens if somebody, when you detect somebody is a politically exposed person? You have to verify that, because sometimes happens that if you ask a customer, are you a politically exposed person? Somebody will tell you, yes, I am politically exposed person. And the reason is because he expects some exceptional conditions. Yeah, red carpet or something like that. Yeah, and even though the person is not politically exposed person. Yeah, so just ask the customer, are you really politically exposed? But just verify that, because sometimes, very often, you will re-evaluate that if somebody is telling you I am politically exposed person, and then you will find out that he or she is actually not. Yeah, you have to make a record. Yes or no, politically exposed person, yes or no. And what is important, the politically exposed person position lasts within the period the person is in the place, is in the position, plus 1 year afterwards. 1 year after the ties, the corruptional ties will disappear. And if the customer is politically exposed person, yeah, you need to do enhanced, so-called enhanced or wider due diligence. So you have to ask much more about the source of the funds and so on. But we will talk about the enhanced due diligence a little bit later. So we have identification, we have detection of politically exposed person position. By the way, I forgot one information. Some companies are using automated tools that help them verify if the customer is or is not politically exposed person. There are some tools sold on internet where you can verify if the customer is or is not a politically exposed person, but they are not very reliable. Of course, ministers, judges, ambassadors, and so on, they are in the databases, but their family surrounding and so on, at those surrounding politically exposed persons, those lists do not work very well, and the service is expensive. So that's why I have suggested you to ask the customer about the position, about the politically exposed person position, and to verify it on the internet, Google it, or you can use also commercially distributed services to detect it, but this is a paid service then, yeah? So, and let's have a look on the due diligence, customer due diligence. This is going to be the most unpleasant part of your job when onboarding the customer, because many customers understand this as a touch into their privacy, because you will have to ask about the source of the funds and about the reason why they want to use your services and so on. So due diligence for individual plus a legal entity. If your customer is individual or a company, the due diligence always comprises gathering following information: purpose of the transaction or business relationship. So you need to know why the customer is using your services. Many companies have an onboarding questionnaire: name, surname, blah, blah, blah. Are you politically exposed person or are you not? And why do you want to use our services? And some options. They let the customer to decide what is the option, why the customer wants to use your services. For example, the customer wants to use your services because he wants to speculate and to earn some extra money with speculating with virtual assets. Or the customer has decided to store the funds in virtual assets. And that's the reason why he is transacting with you, using your services. So these are the most used purposes the customer are claiming. So you need to gather this information. Then, if the customer operates a business activity, so he is using your services within his or her business, these are especially companies, you need to have a full description of all activities the customer is executing. Yeah, if the customer has, for example, let's say coffee, where he sells foods, coffee, beverages, and so on, and he wants to interact with you because he accepts payments in Bitcoins, for example, and he wants to get rid of the Bitcoins in your business, then you need to have the full description of the business activity. Yeah. And you need to know the information about the source of the funds involved in the transaction or business relationship. Yeah. If the customer, so source of the funds, and how detailed should be this information. So if let's separate it. This is not coming from our legislation, but this is a recommendation of Financial Intelligence Unit, and this is a recommendation of the banks in Czech Republic as well. If you have a customer having transactions in a total value below 10,000 euro, you can have just an information about source of the funds, detailed information. But if the total value of the transaction, of the assets entrusted into your environment exceeds 10,000 euro, then you should have also a proof of the source of the funds. One of the documents I have sent you, it's called SOF, Source of the Fund Documents. Yeah, when you open it, it's 2 pages document. It's in Czech. I'm sorry for that. Only maybe there. I never saw a translation into English or into other language. But this is a list of information or into a list of proofs that our Financial Intelligence Unit requires. This document has 3 columns. I know you probably do not understand it. In the first column, you have a typical sources of the funds, yeah, savings, incomes from a business, loan, present or gift, heritage, for example, then sell of property, like when somebody sells a house or a car and so on. So that's the first column. A second column states information you should have. Yeah, if somebody will tell you that source of the funds are my savings, then you should have the information. That's the second column that is written. You should have the information about the height of the income from the previous periods, information about the employee, including the area where the employee works, and what period the savings are coming from. So you should have the employee position and the average salary, and how long did the customer was collecting the savings. This is a lot of information already. Plus, if the value of the assets entrusted into your environments go over 10,000 euro, you should have also the documents, which is the third column. And the third column states examples of the documents where the customer can document you the source of the funds. For example, the savings, back to the savings we were talking about. This is a tax declaration, for example, a confirmation about earnings, for example, or bank account statement where the salary is visible, for example. So if the volume of the funds entrusted into your environment for the total period the customer exceeds 10,000 euro, you should have also a proof of the source of the funds. So this is the customer due diligence. So reason or purpose of the business relationship. If the customer operates the business that includes your services, then the description of the business activity plus source of the funds. Information, or in some cases with high volumes, also a proof of the source of the funds. If the customer is a legal entity, you need to have you need to do some additional steps. Some additional steps. You need to discover the full ownership structure. The full ownership structure of the company, complete chain. Then you need to discover the management structure. So who is in the management of the company? And you need to discover who is the beneficial owner of the company, who is at the end of the ownership structure of the company. The reason why we need to have the full tree of the ownership structure of the company is that we will later check all the companies, all the individuals in the ownership structure on the presence on the sanction lists. Because what we don't want is to provide the services to a customer that itself is not on the sanction list, but in the company's ownership structure there is an individual that is on the sanction list, and that happens in Czech Republic right now due to the situation with Russia invasion in Ukraine, where many let's say Russian originating owners of the companies have been discovered in the ownership structures. To provide services to an entity, to a company or individual that is under international sanctions is not only a breaching of the law, but it's also a criminal act in Czech Republic. So we need to know the full ownership structure. Let's have a look. This is the document I was talking about. The chart with the source of the funds. So this, what you see on this picture, this is an ownership structure of a company. Ownership structure of a company. I wish all your customers look that transparent, because if the company is let's say a sleek, a small company, you usually see the owners of the company in the record from the Czech Business Registry. The record from the Czech Business Registry very often, but not always, very often shows also the ownership structure. This is, for example, very similar to our company. Our company has two owners, 50% and 50%, and that's pretty simple. Yeah, but some ownership structures might be more complicated. Some ownership structures might look like that. You see that your customer is the client, yeah, here on the top, and the customer has 3 shareholders, 70%, 10%, and 20%. You need to know all the shareholders and their shareholders and their shareholders. So you need to have a full ownership structure up to individuals which are in the background. And this might be sometimes very complicated because some companies are running, some ownership structures are running to Cyprus, to Netherlands, or to some territories which facilitate the hiding of the ownership structure. So you need to detect the ownership structure. You need to detect the ownership structure from reliable documents. Reliable documents means official documents. What is not a reliable document? Reliable document is not a declaration of a customer. Customer might draw you this structure, of course, but you will require documents, or you can collect the documents on your own. Yeah, because in some registers or in Czech Republic, you will see the ownership structure. Yeah, so you need to gather the information about the ownership structure, and at the end of the ownership structure, there you see also the beneficial owner. Beneficial owner, very simple thought, is an individual that holds or operates more than 25% of the customer. So if you have this diagram from the reliable documents, you can estimate who is the beneficial owner. Plus, when you have the beneficial owner detected at the end of the ownership structure, then you go to the registry of beneficial owners. In Czech Republic, we have a special registry of beneficial owners, and you will verify if the customer has this beneficial owner inscripted in this register. If you want, I can send you the link to the registry of beneficial owners. It's a separated register, and every company needs to register their beneficial owner, and you will compare it. You will compare the information you have gotten. You have the obligation to compare it. If there is no match of that, what you have found and what's in the registry, you cannot provide the services. That would be dangerous because there is a mistake. Whether you made the mistake or the customer is not adhering the obligation to update the information about the beneficial owner. Yeah, this is very important, and you have to download the document from the registry of beneficial owner. I'm gonna send you the link. Please, Eugen, when I promise you to send something and when I forget it, do not hesitate to remind yourself. You're sorry for that.
Okay, thank you.
I think
will remind you.
Yeah, we will be in contact more, I think. So don't hesitate to say hi and to ask me for some assistance or for something.
Thank you.
Yeah? So now we are coming to the enhanced, strengthened, widened due diligence at customers that are some high risk profile. If a customer is established in high-risk country, this means that the customer has a residency, citizenship, or business seat in high-risk country. You saw the list, yeah? Then you need to make additional steps at due diligence. There are 5 steps you see here. You have to obtain additional documents or information on the beneficial owner, on the nature of the business relationship, on the source of funds and other assets of the customer and beneficial owner. You have to verify the documents and information from multiple trusted sources. And you have to regularly and intensively monitor the business relationship and obtain the consent from your member of a statutory body, from your management, to continue in the business relationship. and you have to execute also other risk reducing measures. Yeah, what does it mean? This means that the majority of the virtual asset services providers, companies like you, simply refuse to provide services to customers from high-risk countries, because to comply with those 5 additional steps is simply too complicated for them. Yeah. So this is for high-risk country customers. Then we have a second type of high-risk customer, and this is our politically exposed person. This is much simpler. You have to obtain a document on the source of the client's funds. So simply, if the customer has a €5 in your environment, you have to ask the customer about source of the funds as it were above €10,000. Yeah, so remember, if the customer is politically exposed person, you have to always ask for the source of the funds documents for the proof. And you won't be surprised, you will be surprised, but many politically exposed persons are already expecting that. For example, wife of ambassadors here in Prague, when they enter an exchange company, and they want to exchange money like €1,200 and so on, they already have in their passport a document showing their incomes. Yeah, so they are sometimes already ready to present you the documents. Some of the politically exposed persons, yes, yeah. Then you have to regularly and intensively monitor the business relationship if the transactions are clear for you, if they comply with what the customer told you about the purpose of the business relationship and so on. And you have to obtain a consent of a member of statutory body, of your management, yeah? Because if the customer is high risk profile due to the country or due to the politically exposed person position, your management needs to agree to continue or to establish the business relationship. So that's the first additional step that needs to be taken when due diligence. And last steps are international sanctions. At the end of this crazy process, you need to verify the international sanctions. What does it simply mean? For international sanctions, we have lists. We have lists that that you can check the customer or entities related to the customer on the presence. Politically exposed persons, we don't have any fixed list. You have to ask the customer and Google the customer, yeah? But for international sanctions, we have exact lists. You need to compare the customer and the related persons to customer on the presence of the sanctions list. So what are international sanctions? These are restrictive measures. I think I don't need to explain to you what are international sanctions. If the customer or any person connected to the customer is on the sanction list, it's a very serious situation. So first of all, do not provide services to such a customer at all, because you would be criminally responsible for that. And second of all, you need to make an announcement. You need to announce it to Financial Intelligence Unit as a suspicious activity as soon as possible. So 2 additional steps. Regarding the sanction lists, I'm quite sure you know many sanctions lists, for example, the American, the British sanction list, and so on. But in Czech Republic, we have 3 sanctions lists that are legally binding for Czech Republic. First is the consolidated list of European Union sanctions. Then there is a government regulation number 210. That's a Czech regulation of intra-European terroristic organizations like IRA, Irish Republican Army, Basque separatistic groups, and South Tyrolean terrorist organizations are on the list. Plus, as the invasion of Russia started in Ukraine, Czech Republic has introduced a new law where we place other individuals, especially from Russia, like the Patriarcha of the church there and so on a separate list, because those entities are not on the European list and we want them to be sanctioned. So this, from this reason, we have also the third list that is new. How to verify, or who to verify? You have to verify any person, any company or individual that is connected to the customer, not only the customer, but any member of a statutory body, any member, any entity, any item that is in the ownership structure of the company that is your customer. You know that you have to have that three picture of the ownership structure, and the reason is because you have to check them on the presence of international sanctions. How to check it? You use this first sanction list check. That's www.sanctionsmap.eu. That's the European sanctions list. Yeah, that's a very nice tool. When you start to write there, for example, my name, you already see if some SIDOR is or is not on the sanction list, or a company, some bank, some trust fund, or somebody who is in the ownership structure. It's gonna tell you if the entity is on the sanction list or is not. Yeah. Plus, I'm gonna get back now. Yeah, the previous. Yeah. Then please Google this Act number 1 from the year 2003, and you will find an XLS. It's an Excel file with the list of entities. I think there are already now 3 or 4 physical entities, 4 individuals that are on the sanctions list, and use this list as well, not only the European, but also as well the Act number 1 2023. If you want, and if you remind me, I'm gonna send you the link to that list as well. Yeah. So sanctions on crypto services. From the 7th of October 2022, it is prohibited to provide crypto asset wallet, crypto asset account, or crypto asset custody services to Russian nationals or natural person residing in Russia, or legal person, entities, or bodies established in Russia. Please do not forget this sanction as well, because breaking this sanction means also not only a breaching, but also criminal responsibility. And many crypto asset services providers in Czech Republic are surprised when they see that sanction exists. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. I'm going to go on. Yeah, this is the web page of www.sanctionsmap.eu, and in the bottom you see a search line where you enter the name. What is important? If you enter, for example, my surname, Sidor, S-I-D-O-R, you would be surprised because there is an entity, there's an individual that has similar name to mine. There's some Sidorov or somebody from Belarus. And so I think a member of a parliament. So if you find somebody there, just check the name exactly and check the date of birth, for example, because most of the positive results when you are searching for international sanctions is coming from as a false positive, from some similarity of the names. Yeah. For example, if you are having children, and if you have a new child, check before you give him or her some exotic name, check the sanctions, because you can complicate her or his life quite dramatically with that. Yeah. So you have to make a record about checking the sanctions. So sanctions, yes or no, and you have to make a list of the entities you have checked as well. In case of positive result, so do not provide services, do not establish the business relationship. If the business relationship was established, you have to terminate it, and you have to report it as a suspicious activity, as a suspicious business activity of the customer, which is something we are approaching right now. Yeah. The law also clearly states situations where it is prohibited to provide services to customer or to establish a business relationship. The law says you cannot provide services to the customer if the client refuses to undergo a full identification, or when the customer refuses to cooperate in the due diligence process. So if you ask the customer about the source of the funds, reason why he wants to use your services and so on, and when the customer is not willing to cooperate with you, this is a reason why you cannot establish the business relation. It's prohibited for your company. Another reason is when the customer does not act on his behalf and he or she does not have a power of attorney. This means a situation when you find out that the assets the customer operates with does not belong to him or her. Yeah, I can operate with assets of somebody else, but I need to present you a power of attorney, and I am not then the customer, but the customer is the real owner of the assets. So if somebody will tell you, oh, the assets is not mine, I'm gonna ask my customer about the assets, yeah, because I'm taking a custody of his assets, then be aware that he is the customer for you. You should identify him, and you should identify me as well as a person acting on behalf of somebody else, and I need to provide you a power of attorney. If I don't give it to you, you are not allowed to provide the services as well. Then you cannot provide services to somebody who is on the sanction lists. This is what we already had, and if somebody is on the sanction list, you not only stop providing services, but also you need to submit a suspicious activity report as well to Financial Intelligence Unit. Another case where you are not allowed to transact with the customer is a situation where no identification or due diligence can be made in accordance to the law. If you are not able to execute the identification or due diligence as the law says, due to some reasons, then you shouldn't provide the services to the customer. And you shouldn't provide the services to customer in case you have any doubts about the veracity of the information provided to the customer, or authenticity of the documents or identity cards presented. So if you have any doubts about the customer, you shouldn't provide the services to the customer. The law prohibits it to you. So, dear all, that was the whole onboarding process. I know it's complicated, but if you develop a routine, it's not that complicated anymore as it looks now on the first sight. We are gonna have a quick look on the obligations you need to comply when the business relationship is established. So the customer went successfully through the onboarding process, and the business relationship was established and it lasts. So you need to comply with two obligations. You need to do ongoing due diligence, and you have to update customer data. Ongoing due diligence is you have to evaluate all the transactions of the customers if they are executed in the line with that what you have detected about the customer, because you have many information about the customer. You have information about the source of the funds, you have information about the purpose of the business relationship, of the business activity of the customer, and you need to detect, you need to verify if the customer is acting in line with that. If somebody will tell you that he or she wants to have some savings in virtual assets, and the customer is transacting there and back, there and back, there and back, it's not typical behavior, and you should ask the customer for explanation. If the customer is entrusting to your environment small amounts, but slowly he goes above 10,000 euro, you should ask the customer for the proof on the source of the funds, and this will happen during the life cycle of the business relationship. So you should watch the customer, and you should evaluate if he or she is acting in line with that, what you know about the customer and what the information you have maybe gotten on your own. Plus, if the customer exceeds 10,000 euro, you should ask the customer for the proof about the source of the funds. The customer will, as a proof of the source of the funds, provide you a document that he or she sold a house, let's say, for 1 million euro. Yeah. Okay, he will provide you the contract, yeah, about the sale of the house, and now you have 1 million euro covered by the document. But if the customer slowly entrusts into your environment more than 1 million euro, you have to ask the customer for additional documents. Yeah. If the customer will tell you, okay, source of my funds is my salary because I am IT specialist and I'm earning 10,000 euro per month, you have to ask, and he will show you, for example, some contract or some account statement where the salary is credited and so on. Okay, that's the document. But if such a customer wants to entrust into your environment more than 10,000 euro per month, you have to ask him again. So you have to watch the volumes through the life cycle of the business relationship as well. Yeah. Plus, you have to update the customer data. Every 2 years at least, or even more often, you have to ask the customer if the data you are keeping about him or about the company, because the company can be your customer as well, if the data is up to date. So you have to ask the customer to go through the process of not identification, but at least you should contact the customer and ask him, is your residence address still true? Is your surname still true? Yeah. What about the list of the member of a statutory body of the company? What about the ownership structure? Yeah. If the customer is high risk profile, for example, connected to the country, like now Croatia, Turkey, and so on, you should do that much more often. You should do that every 6 months or every 1 year. But 2 years are typically for non-problematic customers are fine. Yeah. So you have to update the whole data you have gathered through the identification, politically exposed person screening, due diligence, and sanctions process. You should check the sanctions as often as possible. Nobody will tell you how often. For example, banks are checking the sanctions once a day, yeah, because the sanctions lists they change like once a week, for example, or sometimes twice a week. And we don't want to admit a situation that you have a complicated structure client, let's say company, and the company, somebody who is in the ownership structure was not on the sanction list, but last night was issued a new sanction list with this individual. So we are providing services to somebody who is on the sanction list. So we should check the international sanctions as often as possible. Yeah, this is a difficult task. It's better to automate it. You can also purchase commercially distributed tools where you enter all the names, surnames, company names, and so on, and it regularly screens those individuals on a daily basis on the sanctioned lists, on the mandatory sanctions list, but also on the lists that are from abroad, like from United States, from United Kingdom, and so on. So this might be also an idea for you, but it costs additional money. Yeah. So Majority of that, what I was talking about, is about data gathering, data collection, and you have to store it. You have to store the data. Our law does not tell in which form you have to store the data, but you should have the data simply, for the audit or for somebody else who will need it later. And all the data should be stored in a retrospective reconstruability. What does it mean? You should be always able to show what was done, why it was done, with what result, and so on. Imagine a situation, for example, you are operating a business, and on the 1st of December, all you guys will leave the company, and new guys will come. You will sell the company to somebody else. So the new guys should be able to track what was done 5 years before, for example. So you should store the whole information, the processes made towards the customer in the form that helps you to reconstruct what was before, what was after, why it was done, with what result, and so on. The obligation to store the data, the documents, and so on is given for 10 years after the transaction or after the business relationship was terminated. So please do not delete any information. In some countries, these are only for 3 years, 5 years, and so on. In Czech Republic, we have a very long period. It is 10 years. Yeah. Regarding the photocopy, some of the companies are collecting also photocopies of the identity cards, which is an obligation when you are doing the remote identification. You do not need a special consent. You do not need a special consent of the holder of the identity card. It was before, so you were forced to get consent. Okay, from the customer. Okay, I agree that the company holds the copy of my identity card. You don't need it anymore. Yeah. Now, suspicious activity detection. On the background of what you will do, on the background of provision of your services, you should detect suspicious activity. It means on the background of the onboarding process, and also if somebody goes through the onboarding process and is a satisfied customer, transacts with you, on the background of the transacting with the customer, you should detect the suspicious activity of the customer. Suspicious activity is an activity that is carried out under circumstances giving rise to a suspicion of an attempt of money laundering. So every time you suspect the customer of money laundering or of financing of terrorism, then you should stop the transaction and you should make an announcement to financial intelligence unit, because this is your legal obligation. You are obliged to submit the suspicious activity report always if international sanctions are involved. This is already something discussed. Plus, anytime you think so, anytime you have a suspicion that some money laundering is involved. Yeah, this is up to your judgment, up to the judgment of every employee that is listening, any employee that is involved in the transaction. Yeah, to detect the suspicious transactions, we use signs of suspicious trades, signs of suspicious activity. We have a list of suspicious activities here. We can go through it, but I don't know if all of them are corresponding to the activities you do. If the customer fails to cooperate with due diligence, if the customer refuses to provide identification data, if the customer is reluctant to make a written statement, however, he has no problem to make a verbal statement. If you are asking the customer in written, or if you are asking the customer in verbal, are you a politically exposed person? And he will tell you no. And he will tell the customer, okay, can you send me this statement via email? And the customer will tell you no. I'm telling you no, but I won't send it via email. This is something strange. It does not mean that if some of those signs here appear, that you need to make an announcement. It's not automatic, but it's up to your judgment. And the more signs occur at one customer, the more likely you should be to submit the suspicious activity report. We have some other signs here. You can go through it in the presentation. Yeah. For example, the customer provides confusing, misleading, or contradictory information. Yeah. Or the customer requires to perform other form of identification or due diligence process you require, because for example, not in his presence, not in the way you are used to, and so on, because the customer has a fake documents and so on, and the process he requires might simplify to use of such a fake document in identification process. Yeah. For example, if the customer repeatedly uses vending machines and points of sale of virtual assets where transactions are carried out in a purely anonymous mode. In Czech Republic, as you know, we can execute anonymous transactions up to 1,000 euro. So there are many machines where you can purchase up to 1,000 euro virtual assets anonymously. If you know about the customer that he uses those machines very often, that's also a sign of suspicious activity, because the price conditions of those ATM machines selling virtual assets or buying virtual assets are not very convenient. So if somebody is doing that, he's losing money, and probably he has some reason why he wants to stay anonymously. Yeah. Then the customer changes virtual wallets very frequently and without reason. This might be also connected with some illicit activities and so on. And the list of the signs of suspicious activity is not final. You are bigger professionals in virtual asset services provision than I am, and you can imagine much more signs I cannot imagine. So trust yourself, be vigilant. Yeah, so you should always be considering there might be some money laundering involved, but of course never show a customer that you are doing some detection of suspicious activity. Yeah, if you detect suspicious activity, do go through the identification process. If you didn't yet, yeah, go through the due diligence process. If you didn't yet, because the suspicious activity might be activity on the beginning of the onboarding process. Yeah. So if you feel there is something suspicious, then try to finish the identification and due diligence, even though you already know you are going to submit the suspicious activity report. And then send the suspicious transaction, suspicious activity report to the financial intelligence unit. How will this be done? You won't pick up the phone and call somewhere. Your company should have assigned one so-called contact person. You should announce the contact person to financial intelligence unit. You have 60 days after you get this license for virtual asset services provisions to announce the contact person to financial intelligence unit. If you didn't do that yet, let me know. We are going to prepare the document in cooperation. It's a short document where we will write who is the contact person, telephone number and email, and you send it by post to financial intelligence unit, or I can do that as well, because when you are abroad, it's going to take several days. So if you've done it before, excellent. What I want to tell that all other, no, not yet. Okay, you have 60 days after you get the license. Yeah. So all the other employees or associates of your companies, or helping individuals to your company, when you detect suspicious activity, do not contact anybody directly. Contact the contact person, and contact person will submit the suspicious activity. So the name of the employee who has detected the activity will be hidden. Yeah. So the contact person should take action without any delay. So it should be the best option is to submit the suspicious activity on the same day it was detected. How to submit it? You can send a letter to Financial Intelligence Unit, or we have also a web interface on the Financial Intelligence Unit webpage where you write in the form the suspicious activity report. You will download encrypted XML file, and you send it from the data mailbox, from the official mailbox of the company to Financial Intelligence Unit. These are the quickest options we have. Yeah. What will happen next after you submit the suspicious activity report? It's done. I recommend you have to make a decision if you continue using services to such a customer or not. I do not recommend that, because if a business like you submits a suspicious activity report, this means that there is something very suspicious. Yeah, you won't be submitting suspicious activity report just we are bored, let's make a report. No, you will do that when you feel that there is something dangerous, and from this reason, I encourage you to cancel the business relationship and stop the provision of services to the customer. It would be nice if you have that option in your contract with the customer, but even though you don't have, if you don't have this option in the contract with the customer, the anti-money laundering law gives you the option at any time to terminate the business relationship with your customer. So you are covered, actually. Yeah. What will happen afterwards? The Financial Intelligence Unit will process your announcement in a hidden way, so they won't contact the customer at all. They might send the announcement or the case to police, but only if they have many evidences. Yeah. So very often happens that on one customer, Financial Intelligence Unit will get more announcement from more services providers, like from a bank, from a virtual asset services provider 1, from a virtual asset services provider 2, and so on. And they suddenly feel and they see that the movement of the assets from a distant perspective, and they have many evidences, so they send it to police. Yeah. Very often what will happen, so they send it to police because it's not that serious, but they send it to a financial authority of Czech Republic. So the customer in half a year will get an audit from the financial authorities, from the tax authorities of Czech Republic. And he won't be able to detect that there is an announcement coming from you through Financial Analytical Office, through Financial Intelligence Unit. So you don't need to be afraid to send the announcement, because the customer won't get the information who was it from. Yeah. You have a duty of confidentiality. So you shouldn't show any sign that you are doing some suspicious activity detection. And you should never tell to the customer or to anybody else outside of your company that you have detected the suspicious activity and you have reported it to the authorities, because it's dangerous. It might be dangerous under some circumstances for your company. This is something we don't want. The duty of confidentiality lasts also when you stop doing the business, when you leave the company, and so on. So it lasts for eternity, actually. Yeah. So then you have information in obligation in contrary. You have information obligation. The Financial Analytical Office, FAU, that's our Financial Intelligence Unit in Czech Republic, might ask you anytime to provide an information. How does it look like? You will get a call, you will get a paper into your official company data mailbox. Hi, we are doing some investigation about customer XY, and tell us, in last 10 years, was that your customer? And if he or she was, then provide us all the information you are obliged to have according to anti-money laundering legislation. Give us anything, everything you have, yeah? They will also give you a call. They will give a call to the to the contact person. They will tell them, hi, we need some information. You have a paper from us in your data mailbox. Have a look on that. You have 2 days to answer, and you have an obligation to provide information. Yeah. And you have an obligation of confidentiality if the officials ask you for some assistance. Yeah. So your company needs to elect one member of a statutory body as an authorized person. Every company needs to have one member of a statutory body, so higher management of the company. It needs to be a person that is responsible for anti-money laundering processes in the company. That doesn't mean that the authorized person, the member of the statutory body, is personally responsible, or he or she needs to execute the identification, the due diligence, and so on. But there is a requirement that the anti-money laundering management should be concentrated in the hands of one person from the statutory body. Because imagine you are a large company like a bank, and sometimes happened that one member thought that anti-money laundering is doing the second one, and the second one thought that the first one is doing that, and nobody was doing that actually. So you need to choose an authorized person, but you don't need to you don't need to announce the authorized person to the officials. You need to announce only the contact person, not the authorized person. Yeah. So then the last obligation I have here is anti-money laundering training. I told you already before. What we need to do, please, Eugen, when we stop, when we finish this training, please send me the names and the surnames. I don't need the date of birth, but the name and the surname of the participants of this training, so I can prepare you the certificates about the participation of the training. So I'm gonna need this list because you have to undergo this training every 12 months, first of all, and you need to keep a proof about the training, including the content of the training. And I'm going to prepare those certificates, and you need to keep the certificates for 5 years at least. Yep, 5 years. Contact person is something I already explained to you. The contact person must be designed and announced to financial intelligence unit by letter. So this is something that can be done. Document and information storage, I was talking about it as well. The retention of the documents and information is in any form you have got it, but it lasts 10 years after the business relationship was terminated. Please do not delete anything, because any information might be needed in the future. And please do not forget that you should be able to reconstruct any activity in anti-money laundering. Usually, it looks like you have a storage about your customer with contracts or with transactions and so on. And you have also anti-money laundering log, which is a document where you execute something according to the anti-money laundering legislation. You just add a note, you just add a record about it, what was done, why it was done, and what result, and who did it. That's important as well. So that is something that could help you to keep the backward reconstructability. Yeah. That's the whole information. I know that was a lot of information. The key point was the identification. That is disappointing for you. I fully understand you. If you want, just let's talk about it internally at your company. and we can meet well, next week I'm on holiday in Croatia, but afterwards we can meet